artists, animators, and welcome to the Animation Trends event. Fans of YouTube's The Odd Ones Out will recognize the character of James on Netflix's Oddballs, now in its second season on Netflix. We invited the crew at Atomic Cartoons to discuss their roles on the production and approach to adapting an independent YouTube series to a streaming series, as well as their advice for artists who are interested in working at Atomic Cartoons. So Hallis, Carl, Chelsea, and Maria, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for having us.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So to start today's conversation, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves so we can get a little bit about your current role at Atomic Cartoons. So let's start with Hallis. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Atomic.
Hi, I'm currently a series director at Atomic. I've been at Atomic for 9 years consecutively now, but I was there previous to this run, and I was the animation director on Oddballs.
All right, Carl, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your origin story?
Thanks. So yeah, Carl, head of 2D animation. I've been at Atomic for 12 years now, and in that time, like Hallis, I was series director, animation director, and started as animation supervisor. I've been able to work on quite a few fun shows at Atomic, lots of different types of shows, which is always interesting. The last show I was animation director on was Dogs in Space, which is a Netflix show that kind of came on just before Oddballs started. And then since then, I've moved into head of 2D, so helping out on a little bit more of like the production side of things.
And Chelsea, can you tell us about yourself and what a typical day looks like on the production for you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Chelsea. I'm a storyboard director, one of the 3 of the storyboard directors that was on Oddballs. I'm close. I almost beat Carl, but I'm 11 years at Atomic now. And I wasn't always in storyboards. I've done a little bit of everything. I did backgrounds mostly, but a little bit of animation, compositing, effects. But ended up in boards, and I'm very happy in boards. But a typical day, it depends on the day. It's the board process that requires something different. So going from the script to the thumbnails to roughs to cleans to animatic to edit, it all requires something a little bit different. But the joy of Oddballs was that I had a relatively small crew, so I could really stay with each one of my, work really closely with all my board artists and just kind of create what we hope is a really funny show and really funny board. So I'm quite proud of my team.
And Maria, can you tell us about yourself and your current role at Atomic Cartoons?
Hi, my name is Maria. I was the art director on Oddballs, and interestingly enough, I am not currently at Atomic. I'm currently at Cartoon Network on a preschool show called Jessica.
All right. And Maria, can you tell us a little bit about what a typical day in your role at Atomic on Oddballs look like?
Yes, so when I was art directing on Oddballs, there was a lot of emails. So we had to check every day and check in with production and the design team, make sure make sure we have everything for everybody, to answer all their questions, approvals, give notes. We attend meetings, like on a rotation of meetings, basically every day. Approvals, scheduling, breakdowns with boards and scripts. And then we got to make sure to check in with Hallis, his team, with the builds and the effects team. Basically, on my end, it was just a lot of checking in with everybody to make sure everybody has everything they need to do their job.
And something I wanted to say too, I just want to congratulate you all on the release of Oddballs' second season. It's really exciting that the show has been so successful, and I'm really excited to be talking with you today. For those in our audience not yet familiar with Oddballs, how would you describe the series and its characters?
It's always a tough one. My go-to originally was it's like a very cartoony adolescent version of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but with like science experiments. But we also threw around like Mad Max Fury Road meets the Care Bears, but that's more of a joke. But yeah, it's definitely driven by a protagonist who gets himself into his own problems by usually not letting anything go, which is where the Curb Your Enthusiasm comparison comes in.
I like that. Carl, how do you think of the characters as the head of 2D animation?
From a production side of things, obviously the designs themselves are pretty production friendly. So I think animators were having a pretty good time, like pushing around the flour sack. The character of Max is probably the biggest challenge. There's a lot of design differences in Max that from the rest of the characters to really make him stand out. But I think because the rest of the character designs were a little easier, then it sort of made up for any challenges that the animators might have had with Max. So I think overall the show was pretty balanced. As for the crew working on the show, I think everyone really enjoyed working on the show. The overall, everyone liked the stories they were telling, like the character performances, and could really get their minds into the characters, which is great. And then overall, the pace of the show, like on a production side, was pretty manageable. Like, pretty full days, but within those days, everyone had time to do all the things they needed to do to get the show done and set up correctly so that everyone could survive it, which you can't always say for all shows. Some shows can be pretty challenging on the production side and pretty aggressive. This show seemed to have that right balance for artistic direction and then the time that it was allowed to get there. So that was great.
And Chelsea, on your end, how did you think about the characters and the premise of the show and storyboarding?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's been mentioned a few times, but like drawing these characters is so much fun, especially, I mean, James is such an easy character to draw, so it was very easy to push the expressions. And then Max was easily the board's favorites. We always loved having a scene with Max or getting into shenanigans. There's one scene or episode where he becomes the mayor, and that was like such a fun episode to watch. And so for us on the board team, it was always just about pushing expressions, pushing gags, and having these scripts that allowed us to do this, and this atmosphere of creating these stories that just went all the way out. And then Hallis and Maria nailed it as we gave the boards to them. So yeah, it's great.
And Maria, how do you think about like the characters and the premise in terms of art direction?
It was really fun to have James already part of the YouTube show Odd Ones Out. So there was kind of like a beacon that we could use to always come back to. But in terms of like designing the characters, we just really wanted to make sure that everybody fit in the same world. We had to create guidelines on our show that made it feel like they belonged to James. So we had most of our humans basically just like soft, squidgy characters, this shade that same rounded shape that James has. So we avoided a lot of like angular characters, angular just shapes in general, because it really felt like it took them away from the world that we were creating.
That's a good point. I wanted to ask, since we're talking about the second season, what scenes presented the most interesting creative challenges for you during production of the show's second season? And Maria, I just wanted to ask if you had any if you had any insights on the design side for the second season of the show.
Second season, I think, is really awesome. It's probably if we're comparing first, second season, it's like my favorite season out of my two children. It's the best children. It's the best child. I think everybody got so good with Chelsea's team, the boards. The storytelling got so good with the expressions and just pushing everybody. And it wasn't just like just on James and Max. It was basically everybody that needed a push got a push. And it was just really fun to design around all of the board, the crazy things that the boards did. It was really fun. There was one scene where they pushed Max to look like James, and on that storyboard breakdown, I think we were all just disgusted. Like all of us, just like, oh, what's happening? And we gave that one extra love. So all those disgusting things, all those like fun expressions, the design team, we really, even though it's like hard and painful for us because we know we have to do it, we called it out anyway.
Okay, so I think I now have to ask, Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit more about that scene?
Oh my gosh. Well, that is my all-star, Ross MacArthur, who was my revisionist, kind of turned board artist. He came from an animation background, so he kind of knew how to hand off these boards to animation. But yeah, that scene, I mean, it was one of these, I knew he was really good at pushing expression, so I just kind of handed it to him like, we need to make this even crazier. We had something, but it was not crazy enough. And so when I hear Maria saying like, it disgusted us, it's like, yes, we did it. So that's kind of our goal, is always to just make each other laugh, or like we get into the board pitches and see another board team pitch and it's like, oh, in the chat, like, all right, perfect, that gag stays, you know.
Hallis, Hollis, I wanted to ask you, what would you say were the most interesting creative challenges for you in the second season of the show?
Well, that scene we were talking about was definitely the most enjoyable on the side of interesting creative challenge. From the moment we saw the board pitch for that to the moment the animation was finalized, every time I watched it, tears would be coming out of my eyes from laughing. The first time I saw it ever, just in boards, I was dying. And so the moment I saw it, I knew I checked the episode order and which supervisor was supervising that episode, and it was Andy Navarro, who's a fantastic animator. He's currently an animation director on another show at Atomic, and I just sent him a message. I said, "There's a sequence in this episode coming up that you are going to animate yourself, and like you can't give it to anybody. You're doing it." And then when he finally saw what it was, he's like, "Yes, I will do that." But that one, thankfully, because it was Andy and Maria's team did such great designs based on the fantastic boards, that wasn't actually that much of a challenge because we had all the right people working on it. So I'd say the biggest challenge from season 2 was an episode called School Poolers. We have them riding to school in a golf cart, and there's one scene where 6 characters, including Max and James, are riding in that golf cart, and the golf cart comes this way towards camera, then turns and goes that way. And it's a golf cart, so it's got the little roof and it's got the poles on each side, so it's not like a contained car. You can't hide anything. So we're seeing 6 characters plus a golf cart with all its interior and exterior designs just slowly rotating, because it's a golf cart too, so it doesn't go fast. And it's up close. Like we were able to pull off some cheats here and there where we didn't see the wheels touching the ground when it turned, but what we did see was still a massive challenge, and it took one of our strongest animators a very long time to get it, and then to get it to where he took it, and then we still needed to do some revisions on it to make sure that everything was working just right. It turned out really nice, I think, though.
I love this industry. where like one of the most challenging things is something that in live action would be very simple comparatively. And Carl, what scenes presented the most interesting creative challenges for you during the production of the second season?
Well, for me as head of 2D, I'm not really on the shot level, but I do know that towards the end of season 2, we had a little bit of time to look back overall and sort of see where the show had gone and pick some moments within the season that we could go back into and kind of help plus up along the way. Sometimes a show will be, like, not all shows are created equal. And so some animatics will prove to be a little bit more challenging for the crew to, try and get all their shots in on time. Or within the production time, we have some shows get compressed a little bit. And so finding some moments in there to just kind of go back overall and go back in and kind of plus some things up, which I think the team did like an amazing job on. So as a viewer, I don't know if you would even notice where we went back in necessarily, but trying to find like some of those peaks and valleys and giving the whole season overall a cohesion, which I feel like everyone achieved.
No, that's really cool. And I know I already called on you a little bit earlier, but Chelsea, what other scenes for you were the most interesting creatively during the second season?
I mean, we were talking about all the challenges, and the finale episode was easily the hardest, probably the hardest board I've ever actually worked on, because finale episodes are always really tricky because usually every character shows up and there's some big, action sequence that usually involves a mech suit, which I'm not kidding. Most of my boards have always had a mech suit for some reason. And, it has to be satisfying, it has to feel good for the audience to watch. So our finale, we rewrote it and reboarded it in its entirety 3 times. So it was quite something to like be working on an episode again and again and again. And it was also at a time when all the board artists were starting to roll off because contracts were ending and people were jumping onto other shows. So I was kind of grabbing board artists from the other teams and just kind of taking whoever I could get just to get this finale over the finish line. So hopefully the end result is good and satisfying and funny, but it was quite a journey to get to it.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed is like characters in Oddballs are very malleable, especially with like extreme poses and expressions. Chelsea, on your end, what was it like as a storyboard artist when you have characters that are so squishy?
I mean, it's an advantage because then you can do a lot more with them. So if it's, a character is I'm just looking at the picture of James and Max here, and if they're sad, it's like, oh, just a sad expression. But are they like the most sad they've ever been? Do they collapse on their knees and they scream up to the sky? And are their eyes, like waterfalls coming out? So it depends on the character, how much you could push them. Like we had a bully character, Stuart, who was great because he was just this big goo blob that could kind of do anything really. And then Max, of course, being the alligator. And Hallis kind of mentioned it before too, with the designs can be like change from pose to pose, and we can go super detailed or super like cartoony. So yeah, it was fun to be able to just kind of find that range and push it wherever we needed to push it.
Maria, I wanted to ask you, because these characters are characters who have very extreme poses and expressions, but also need to be designed for cutout animation or rigged animation. How did you like consider the challenges with these characters while designing them?
It was a lot of back and forth with me, Hollis, James, Sarah, Carl, is to just see like how far they would like to push it and how much time we have in production. Because theoretically we could, if we had a lot of time and money, we could basically do anything, right? But we don't. And
this is the reality of any animated production.
Yeah, we don't. We can't do that. So it was really a lot of back and forth with how far we can take the characters in terms of designing them, and also the episodes kind of stack on top of each other, so we don't really have a lot of resources for our artists. Some days we just don't have enough time to actually get where let's say Carl would want it, you know. So it was a lot of give and take as far as where the design is. But I think, and I really think most of our resources went to designing the best expressions and poses that we can get out of our designers, just because that is what the show is. Without pushing it, I don't think Oddballs would be where it is. Yeah.
Hollis, in your opinion, what was your approach to the animation side of these characters, considering how extreme the poses and expressions can get?
Yeah, it was there was a big learning curve at the start of production for sure. I was definitely had a good position because I came on board pretty early, and we were able to do some animation tests and explore stuff with James, with James Rawlison overseeing it, as well as the other showrunners, Ethan and Carl Ferrullo, and we learned so much. That's where a lot of the discoveries were. But for the team that we had, and pretty much everybody from myself all the way down to every animator and animation revisionist, we're mostly used to very rig-based shows where this is the puppet and you just move them around and you maybe let's stretch it a little bit here, redraw a little bit there, get some special poses whenever you need them. But we didn't have such a malleable style to work with, and it was very much like, no, you just break it, just make it this way. Look at the boards, make it look like the boards, make it look silly. It's better to look funny and extreme than to look on model. And what's on model for our show is much larger than another show. Like a lot of shows, this is on model, and our show was like, I can't even fit my arms into the camera for how much our range was. So that was the big challenge, just kind of learning how far we can go. And often it was just like, oh, you think you went too far? Actually, you can still go a lot farther. And that's one of the reasons why I think we all feel like season 2 is the best season, because we had a lot of continuity. Almost everybody who started season 1 finished season 2. We had very little turnover, and so everybody got really, really comfortable. We were all having so much fun, especially by the end. And so that was the big animation experience for us, where it was just pushing things really far. Would now be a good time to take a look at that clip? Just
yeah,
because
absolutely.
We've talked a lot about it, and so I'm going to actually just see if I can get the sound to pick up from my mic. So I'll just do it here. So I'll try not to talk much to avoid an echo, but let's see.
Maybe it's worth us stopping on each one of these and just kind of talking through the steps.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. So why don't we start with the was it layout first or was it storyboards first?
Storyboards.
Yeah, right, of course.
Yeah. We create the problems.
We love you guys.
Yeah. But we would be given a background that, or like what the hallway might look like, but yeah, from design.
Yeah, let's see if I can get the. It chose to make us to take a break and look at what each step is.
Amazing.
I'll just refresh. I think.
I think the technology is very considerate.
Yeah. It's that AI learning that they do. Should have downloaded this. There we go, storyboards.
Yeah. I mean, it says it right there. We are kind of whenever I try to describe storyboards to say, a relative or something that doesn't know what animation is, I kind of describe it as it's like a blueprint, but kind of like a comic book as well. So we're given the script and then, have to interpret it. And so in this case, the direction was Max turns into James. So it was like, all right, what does that look like? And we had something originally and it wasn't pushing it enough. And then, like I said, I gave this to my revisionist and was like, just go crazy. And he did. So just really making it the most excruciating. I think we got a note from Carl Furillo too, saying like, make it look as if it's really painful for Max to do this. So just the tears coming down, the neck breaking and collapsing in on itself. And yeah, so.
Okay, now let's try to find layout over here. There we go, perfect.
So I want to expand on this. So we'll get the storyboard from the board team, and this one, while we were breaking it down, we were picking which expressions were the most valuable for Hallis, and then we would design those and give it color so that when they get it, they can use it as a reference to really push the animation. And then while that's happening, I have another, in my design team, we also have the background department. So we'll break down the storyboards to figure out which parts need, which scenes we already have. And then we could just reuse the backgrounds that we do, or which ones that we need to design more of so that we can give it to the layout team. And then from there, they'll fill in the rest of the episode.
And a little behind the scenes thing is, I'm pretty sure every single storyboard panel in that shot, we just got Maria's team to design for us because
we did.
Yeah.
Because it was important to make it to make it look like it was painful, to make it look like like it was gross. I'm telling you, Chelsea, when we were breaking it down, it was like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
Excellent. Love to hear it.
It was great. It was great. It was probably one of my favorite ones that we've ever done.
Yeah, and so for animation, there's a little typo in here for storyboards. But we just, this scene especially is so well boarded that the designs were so nice that our key poses were already pretty much worked out for us. But because it is such a painful and kind of violent transformation, there was a lot of interpretation of like adding a bit of a stagger, but you don't want to just do like the kind of mechanical one step 2 steps forward, 1 step back stagger. You want to have a little bit of a actual more like a convulsion, and really wanted to play with the breaking of bones, and thankfully Andy Navarro and I have known each other for a really long time, worked with each other for a long time, and we were able to kind of communicate in a bit of a shorthand where maybe I can just I can act something out a little bit, describe it a little bit, and then go back and forth, and he took it. He had a better job than I could have ever asked for, but it was really, really wonderful to see it all come together. These are those.
I really wish you could have recorded those Zoom calls.
Yeah. If only we did put it on the special features. But yeah, it was a real treat. Just getting that right timing, and because we really, really wanted to, every step of the way, you want to plus it. You want to take what's given to you and make it better, and really wanted to dig deep into that, the painfulness, the grossness, all that stuff. And then after animation, we took it to effects, and they added the tears and the pain, the pain blasts of when is just a little impact mark here and there. One thing I really liked was it was in the boards, the tears streaming down his eyes, but in effects they added boiling of the tears, just welling up in his eyes, just taking it to that next level of just everything's really painful. Daniel Larg was our effects supervisor, and he did some really fantastic work on the show. Lots of fires and tears and slime. Then compositing for this scene specifically, and just throughout, they add tone. You can see some tone, like a shadow along Max. James was the only character who had the built-in tone. Everybody else got the tone added after the fact. As you can see, the scene got darker and darker as things progressed, to really put the spotlight on the characters. They added a soft focus on the pain impact effects, and then just did some color corrections here and there when need be. And then something they always had to do on the whole show was just line weight adjustments to make sure that they fit for where the camera was placed. If it's a close up, they have to thin out the line weight quite a bit, and just anywhere in between, just have to make adjustments to make sure the line weights were looking good. And they also helped out our retakes team by completing any little line breaks and color gaps that might come up here and there. They did a lot of great work for us. Compositing is often one of the unsung heroes of animation.
Yeah, and when the whole production is vector, that makes it a lot easier for those adjustments at the compositing stage too.
For sure. And if the I don't know how much of the audio came through when I was playing it, but I highly recommend people check it out on Netflix so they can hear the real painful sounds that Max is making as he makes his transformation. Not just his cries of agony, but the cracking and stuff. It's just it's a really it's just a great scene.
All right, I wanted to ask Carl, from your point of view, how did the team approach designing and animating these characters for rigged animation?
Yeah, so I think as you're sort of hearing from everyone, there's a lot of conversation and back and forth between departments, and that's a really big part of it. The board team will sometimes say, can we do this? As they're sort of, proposing some of these more elaborate design changes and that sort of thing. And so then, having those discussions with the design team, Maria art directing, and Hollis directing animation, just to make sure like nothing is sort of outside of the scope of the show, but we're still pushing that creative look. And then I think like overall, the production teams themselves really like discussing amongst them. There'd be a lot of meetings behind the scenes. So after you go through and do a design breakdown or an animatic breakdown, and you have a lot of questions, the production team was fantastic at, you know, bringing up some of those questions to some of their department leads, following up on things, and really making sure like as much as we're pushing the show, it is going to be doable, and we're going to, you know, be able to achieve everything that we're trying to do creatively. So I think in that way as well, the production teams are also some of the unsung heroes. You know, they really are the ones kind of behind the scenes, connecting the dots, following up, and making sure that everyone is communicating clearly and has a pretty good understanding of moving forward. So in that way, yeah, big shout out to everyone on the production team.
And Carl, I wanted to ask you in particular, how does Oddballs compare to other projects that the team at Atomic has worked on in the past in terms of scope and complexity?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an ambitious show, but again, I think a big shout out to Netflix for, you know, creating a show this complex, but then also giving the team time to bring that show to screen. I think that extra time that they gave us was really beneficial in having a really like nice uniform looking show. Like I said before, you know, there's always peaks and valleys, and, you know, some shows can be a little bit more outside of the box, and then sometimes you have to kind of scale back a little bit more here and there. I think overall there was sort of this idea that we are going to push things and really like explore the cartoony style and look, and they gave us the room to be able to do that. So I think right from the get-go, on all sides, they were really like behind this show and pushing it forward, and I think we saw that. Yeah. So compared to other shows, there's a lot of times where, you know, there's a lot of big ideas, but then those ideas end up getting scaled back because you have certain production limitations, and you can only kind of achieve a certain look, and at some point it doesn't become scalable. Whereas here, I think right from the beginning, everything was sort of in alignment, and it really was just up to the people in all of the creative positions to just push that creativity forward, and hopefully everyone loves what we came up with.
I wanted to ask, Chelsea, how did you approach adapting in terms of the story and tone of something that was originally a YouTube series like The Odd Ones Out to a television series?
Yeah, so one big benefit that we had on this, and we've mentioned it before, is James was really heavily involved in the show. So whenever we had board pitches or script handoffs, he was always there, and it was great because we could bounce gags off of him or ideas, and he would do the same. So his voice definitely was really present. But the other thing that we really wanted to achieve was these great expressions that James draws for the character in the Odd Ones Out shorts. So right away, one of the first things we were given was like a huge sheet of just his face and all these different expressions that he had done in the shorts. So whenever we could, we would pull from those, sometimes steal directly from those expressions and throw them into the boards, just so it hopefully would bridge that gap, that James character would feel the same in the shorts as he does in the show. So yeah.
And Maria, how did your team approach adapting the style of The Odd Ones Out to something that feels more like a television series?
So for the design, we wanted to honor and take inspiration from the YouTube show. And because James, like Chelsea said, is present, it was great to get his voice on it, especially also because he lives where the show is set. in Chandler, Arizona. That's where we took the inspiration from for the town dirt. And we, like I said earlier, we wanted to fit all the characters to James. Rather than have James fit into this world, we wanted to design the characters to make them, rounded edges, not so angular, just so that they all felt cohesive, even though they're different species. And because it is set in Arizona, we wanted to have like darker brown lines on the backgrounds to make it feel inherently just warmer, just right off the bat. And from there we took inspiration from like his original YouTube shows, the colors that they used, and just basically enhance it for the show because we had more people to do it with. And James approved everything, so.
Yeah. I would say like The Odd Ones Out is a very ambitious YouTube series, but one of the things that really stands out with Oddballs is just the amount of detail in the animation itself. So Hollis, how did you approach adapting The Odd Ones Out to the animation style in The Oddballs?
Yeah, it was a really fun experience, and like both Chelsea and Maria have said, it was great having James Rollison involved along the way because we definitely referenced the Odd Ones Out YouTube series as much as we could, but then there are things where like actual in-betweens that were missing and a lot of the characters on Odd Ones Out are very similar to James, but so we don't know how to handle Max and the rest of the cast. So it was a lot of exploration. We did tests early on to find that style, and the thing we really didn't want to do was alienate the fans of Odd Ones Out because they're very loyal and the show wouldn't exist without them, I think. So we wanted to kind of give them a treat rather than a disappointment. So we're trying to show them what it would look like to see this show fully animated. So we're trying to keep it really, really snappy, really high energy, very expressive. Like Chelsea said, get all those expressions in there. Match those really expressive storyboards that Chelsea's team and the other storyboard directors were giving us, and just really match the spirit of Odd Ones Out, but in a big production, in the scope of a big production, I'd say.
And Carl, do you have any other thoughts about how your team approached adapting the style and animation of The Odd Ones Out to a television series?
I think, Hollis, in the maybe you want to comment more on like the R&D process there, but yeah, I think there was definitely like some specific things in there that you needed to kind of like figure out where the YouTube shorts could sort of, take a shortcut or present something in a bit more of a limited way, whereas we needed to really like fully realize some of those things, and those were definitely some of the challenges there.
Yeah, we did have one interesting this is something that goes back to design as well. But one thing that we discovered once we started animating was if you look at the Odd Ones Out shorts or the series, the line thickness on those YouTube videos is really thick. It's super thick and pretty consistent for all characters. We started out with that thickness on James, but it didn't work on the other characters who have more details. Like if you've got a character like James where he's literally an outline, 2 dot eyes, and a mouth, it doesn't really matter how thick the outline is. when you're just looking at him. But then you've got Max and his little teeth. You've got McFly and his whole wardrobe. All those things, if you drew them with that same thickness, it would be just like a mess. It would just be so hard to make out those details. So then we thinned out their line weights, but we still needed to keep James thicker to harken back to the YouTube series. And so it was a lot of experimenting with that early on in the R&D process. And then we also had to revisit the builds from time to time. We had absolutely fantastic build supervisor named Norvan Sagoped, and he just was wonderful. There's nothing would fluster him, and he was just like, give me all the negative feedback, like tell me what's not working and I will fix it. And he did it, and I've never seen a team happier with builds than his final iteration of the Max build. But yeah, we had a long period of R&D at the beginning with animation tests where we took a couple scenes from the first episode and we just played with them, experimented with them, showed them to James, showed them to Ethan, showed them to Carl Ferrulo, and got their notes. And it was at the start, it was like, this is too soft, this is too dramatic, this is too safe. Please push it, make it more extreme, make it faster, make this action this much faster, add more force, all these things. And it's just much more bombastic, more energetic, and more expressive was where we ended up going. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a great opportunity. You don't often get that R&D at the start of a production. Usually that R&D is pretty much just spent on doing walk cycles or building library material, and you do a bit of discovery there, but you don't get to do it. You don't actually get to start a scene and run into all those problems that you in advance of when you would normally run into them, which was fantastic.
All right, Carl, I wanted to ask you, do you have any recommendations for artists in our audience who'd be interested in working at a studio like Atomic Cartoons?
Yeah, for sure. So at Atomic, on the 2D side, we work almost exclusively with Harmony Toon Boom. So having a really good understanding of the Harmony tools and the workflow, all of that is pretty much a prerequisite. As you can see in a show like Oddballs, we're kind of taking some of those, standard rig structures, and we're really pushing it as far as it can go. Some of the designs that Maria did as special pose, we actually didn't need to rig those out as their own unique special pose. We could actually push the standard rig into that pose, with some additional drawing and some animators' assistance along the way for sure. But knowing the basics of Toon Boom Harmony is certainly going to get you there a lot faster. So I would say that that's one of the biggest things specific to Atomic. And then, also just a good foundation. So, as an artist, are you curious? Do you ask a lot of questions? Are you interested in problem solving? Because, really the show is just one long creative challenge, and it's just people going through day by day and solving all of those challenges and making the show work. So, having that as sort of the way you see the world and approach things is really, really helpful. And big part of it is also communication. So how do you communicate as an artist? It's a mixed media. So, everyone approaches problems in a different way. And so some people are a little bit more verbal, some people more visual, some people are written word, but all of those things do add up to the strength of the production. So everyone can kind of contribute in their way, but there's sort of a general theme of collaboration in that communication. So I think some of those things as just an artist is really important. Of how are you communicating? And even the show itself, as a visual art form, it's communicating to its audience. So I think that's sort of inside the essence of making a show. And then how well are you supporting the people around you? I know that I know there's a lot of discussion around culture in a studio, and really that's sort of down to almost the individual artist of like what is your culture, what are your values. And so like a big part at Atomic is in that collaboration. So how are you as an artist supporting the artists around you? So I think some of those things are like some of them are bigger talking points, some of them are specific to you and how you approach the work that you do, but I think it all kind of adds up to a fun place to work at. So yeah, I think some of those things could be helpful for people starting into the industry.
All right. Maria, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of what you'd recommend for artists who want to work on a show like Oddballs? Also, could you introduce your cat?
This is Fitzwilliam Darcy. He wakes me up at 5:30 in the morning every day. He gets my dog and my other cat riled up, and that's my life. The end. So for artists who want to start out, I mean, I would say if you want to be in the design department, basically maybe figure out where in the design department you would like to be, because there are different departments. We have character designers, prop designers, layout artists, background designers, background painters, color designers. Those are all like each different skill sets, and sometimes they overlap. But I think the most important thing about designing is your storytelling aspect. Like, what is it about your design? What story are you? What story are you trying to tell with your character or your backgrounds? Like, for example, for Oddballs, we put a lot of jokes in the backgrounds, and it was we get anything funny we put in there, and sometimes they get called out. Sometimes they're like, maybe don't put that in because legal, But just basic, get drawing, get painting outside. I can tell you how elated I was when I was first starting out, and I matched the color of my skin with real paint. That was so fun. Still remember that day like it was yesterday. Just, keep up those skills, because the industry changes so fast that we have new programs to use, or something is always changing. But I would say that when you are in a crew, you work with other people and you have one goal, and that goal is to make the best show that you can. So it was a really fun, really fun, exciting time to be at Oddballs with all these wonderful people, because we all just had fun making a show together.
For sure. And to your point too, the animation industry is relatively small and tight knit, and it's important to treat people on your teams well, because you'll probably wind up working with them again on other productions. So being nice goes a long way. Hallis,
very nice.
I want to ask, do you have any advice for animators who are interested in animating for a show like Oddballs?
Yeah, so Carl and Maria both have said some really good points. From an animation side, and especially for an Oddballs type show, there was a while, and it's still happening, but there was a while where with like Flash and earlier Toon Boom Harmony, where your drawing skills weren't as important to be a good animator. Like, it was more about performance, about timing. That it doesn't always translate being a good artist into being a good animator, and especially when you're using kind of a puppet-based system where redrawing isn't as important. But nowadays, I think really, and especially on an Oddballs style show, you really want to be able to have a skill set where drawing, and this it might sound like a no-brainer because we're talking about animation, but you don't need to be a fantastic artist, but being able to draw like funny expressions or understanding a little bit of structure and form, and also the hardest one, and I think people will always, if they're even trying to do it, it'll be a lifelong journey, is finding like appeal, making those creative choices where it's like, oh well, this technically, like if I move this character's arm to be flat to their side, their arm is like crazy long or like deformed, but because of this pose where they're like reaching towards the camera, I'm making these choices to make it look better for this specific pose, and it's not technically correct, but it looks better. Like those type of things are really good to understand, and that really comes in handy for a show like Oddballs, but in any show nowadays, if you want it to look just, if you want to look better than just like a puppet being posed around, you need to have a bit more of an understanding of dimensions, like form, structure, and appeal. But then I'd say one thing I definitely see or look for when I'm looking at people coming out of school or a little bit less experience on their reels is timing. I really like to see some timing, like appealing timing in their animation, rather than everything being really even and really slow, or kind of, or like chaotic, or especially now that most of it's done with computers, just like clearly done, just like default tweens, where it's just, especially with like a 2D show, 2D animation, where it's like a character moves and then stops, and then the drawing swaps, and then and it's just like, you got to figure out you do it at the fastest moment, and also like make it a little, add a little bit of variety to that timing. Like for me, what I like to say is like,
I like how we can't get away from the principles of animation. They've been in practice since the 40s, and it's still true. You need to have easing and arcs.
Yeah, and I like to say there are people who are really good at that sort of thing, who add like they do. There's like this whole checklist of things, and it's not easy, but once you get there, it's fantastic. And I like to describe those people as people who put love into their work. Like they're doing it, they're animating with intention, and like every little action they do is they're putting thought into it. Like how will this look? How do I make this look the best it can look? How do I make this character look like they're alive and like are in the moment? Like, is there something behind their eyes? All these things, rather than like point A to point B. And you can't do it on every shot, of course, and every shot doesn't necessarily allow for that. But it's just those things I see, and especially in like junior reels, where it's just like, I know you're using a computer to do this, but also the computer is supposed to help you get it done easier. It's not supposed to do the work for you. Like you're still responsible for every frame that I see. So if the computer doesn't if the computer's not doing its job for you, you go in there and you fix it yourself, so that I can see that you can make these choices, and that you're doing this with intention. But then finally, be nice. Like being nice is the number one thing. Like every production is different. Some productions are incredibly hard and taxing on everybody, and maybe the tasks maybe are too hard for the time that you have. So maybe there's some stuff going on with your life, maybe stuff going on with your computer that are causing you to have problems with the work you're doing. So like you can't always produce like you to be get somebody that people want to work with. There are a few things that you can do. You can be really reliable and really do really good work, and you can be really nice and really pleasant to deal with. And sometimes you can't be reliable, and sometimes your work can't be as good as it is because of all those factors. But you can be nice, and like even if you're having a terrible day, and you're not, and your patience is wearing thin, or like you're feeling really sad, if you've established that you're a nice person, you can be like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, or this is going on in my life, and people will understand. But if it's just like, if you're a tyrant and you do great work, the moment you don't do great work, people are ready to like cut you loose. They're not necessarily like fire you or anything, but they're like, okay, well, the one thing that they had going for them, they didn't do it, and also like maybe I could find somebody just as good as them who's also nice next time around. So I think how you carry yourself and how you behave is the one thing that you can really be in control of. You don't have technical issues with that. You don't have server crashes dealing with that. So like that's the one thing you can manage and just try to be a pleasure to work with. And Oddballs was so fantastic for that. Like every day was so much fun. Every meeting, every like design meeting, every storyboard kickoff, even like the meetings where I'd be sitting in the meeting for like 3 hours and the director, like the Sarah, the series director, and Carl and Ethan and James would be calling out all the things they wanted my team to change. They were a blast. Like it was more work for me and my team to do, but it was just like, yeah, I agree with it, and you guys are like a pleasure. So we had a really great time.
Okay, I have two last questions. Carl, these are really important questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, question number one. How can our viewers watch Oddballs?
Sign up for Netflix. No password sharing. Yeah, you got to get your account. You got to only view it in the confines of your. If someone's peeking in through the window, close the curtains. Tell them get their own account. So that's a good way of doing it.
And my second question is, how can our viewers apply to work with the wonderful crew at Atomic Cartoons?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, please just go to our webpage and check us out there. There's all of our information. You can see who works here, maybe even see some familiar faces, and check out some of the other shows that we've worked on, so you can kind of get an idea for the types of shows that we do. But also, I know as a studio, we're looking to expand into some of the other more adult kind of shows as well. So hopefully you'll see a wide variety of different types of shows out there. So something for everyone. So yeah, please check us out.
All right, so I want to thank you all for joining us today, Maria, Hallis, Carl, and Chelsea. And thank you to our audience for joining us for the Animation Trends event. The Animation Trends event is an online conference hosted by Toon Boom Animation. You can visit toonboom.com for details about interviews, panel discussions, and speed training courses. And we hope that you tune in for the next discussion.